to episode 7 of the Endurance Eats series. If you are an endurance athlete, a runner, a triathlete, cyclist, this video series is for you, as my dietitian team and I are here to take your nutrition and fueling questions and discuss them in depth. So I am Alex of Alex Larson Nutrition, and I have with me my dietitian team members, Hannah Cooley and Mary Wirtz. We work one-on-one with endurance athletes from around the world, in addition to being athletes ourselves. So if you are new to this video series, don't forget to tap the subscribe button here on YouTube to make sure you get alerts for future episodes when they are released. If you have your own endurance nutrition questions that you'd love for us to discuss here, head to the comments and ask. We will add it to the queue. Today's video is going to be really good. We are going to be talking about supplements and some of the latest trends in performance aids for endurance sports. So we're going to get right into this, talking about sodium bicarbonate, and this is kind of a new trend just because Morton recently released this product a few months ago. Definitely is pricey. And they have these claims that it helps athletes really push the boundaries of their efforts and power during high intensity efforts. We actually, Mary, you are our guinea pig in this, so I'm definitely going to have you lead this one off and talk more about sodium bicarb. And then I also want you to share your own experience using this as you trained for it was Eugene Marathon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this topic. I feel like I say that about every topic we do, but I really, really, really love this one. And I like that it's become so trendy recently. However, I looked at the research and what the research supports for utilizing sodium bicarbonate, and it's been well researched for years, if not decades. And it's recently gained ground because Morton, like you mentioned, had marketed their new product, the Morton sodium bicarbonate system. And that is because historically, when people have used sodium bicarbonate, good intention, of course, invariably it can lead to unwanted GI consequences. Nausea,
and you're talking
vomiting.
about like the sodium bicarb that like you can find in your kitchen, right? Like
absolutely, like baking soda that people have.
Yeah.
Good old baking soda that you use as a household cleaner, that you use in baking, muffins, all of these recipes. Now, athletes have used it for counteracting the harsh consequences of lactate buildup. We know that the buildup of lactate tends to be one of the predominant rate limiting factors in performance, particularly in those high intensity, mostly anaerobic activity. So when you have that lactate buildup, typically you feel side effects, the extreme fatigue. You can't push any harder. You can't go any faster. Ultimately fatigue, which can deter your end performance. And the sodium bicarbonate has been researched because it helps buffer that lactic acid buildup and the rising acidity when you have that lactic acid buildup. So I will tell you, the research that I pulled has been performed in mostly high intensity anaerobic activities varying in length, typically 30 seconds, like if you're doing all out sprint intervals, to 10 minutes. There has not been a lot of research to this date in longer, more endurance-based sports. Now, a few months ago when Morton released their product, one of their employees, one of their spokespeople actually hopped on a call with me. It was a very lengthy call. It was almost an hour, which was super amazing for them to do. Ultimately to discuss their research that they have performed behind their product in some of these longer endurance-based sports, which again, the research hasn't existed to this point in those longer sports. But essentially what they're touting is a 1 to 4% improvement for athletes in performance across all endurance sports that they tested. And they did cyclists, road cyclists, gravel cyclists. They're doing marathoners, trail ultra runners as well. So they're doing a wide variety of endurance-based sports, but by and large, across all of the sports that they assess, they're seeing a 1 to 4% in performance-enhancing benefits, which is outstanding. I will tell you, I wish that they would almost release their research to the general public because for the most part, we're kind of otherwise going off of their word. And again, the research that I did, there just has not been a lot of other research in endurance-based athletes. So this is kind of gaining ground most recently.
That's so cool. And so talk about your experience using it. Like, what did
Yes.
you like about it? What did you not like about it?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so you buy this kit, and the kit comes with 4 bowls, so 4 servings that you can utilize before races or some of your hardest workouts. It is expensive. This is one of the main downfalls of it. It's $60 or $65 for 4 servings, which we can all agree that's very expensive for a sports nutrition product. So major downfall there. But you get these kits, and it's like this little bowl with a lid, and you fill that with water, 8 ounces of water, and you mix the hydrogel mix in there. The hydrogel mix has about 40 grams of carbohydrate. So that's important to know if you're using it, obviously the morning before a hard ride or before a marathon. That's 40 grams of carbs that you can include kind of in your meal planning pre-race. And then right before you consume it, that's when you add the little sodium bicarbonate mini pellets. It's like these mini capsules that you mix in with the hydrogel, and then you eat this concoction like soup. Okay? Now, the first time I tried it, and I have a pretty strong stomach gag reflex. I can handle quite a bit. It was gag inducing. And this is why. I had it at room temperature, and it was the consistency of mucus going down the hatch. And it was like 8 ounces, a full cup. It was just a lot. But as the instructions say in the box, you don't have to eat all of the hydrogel. You do want to get in all of the mini capsules, though, because that's going to be the sodium bicarbonate in there. So I got it down, and the first run that I tried it before, I really wanted to do it before a harder effort. I think I had 17 miles at goal marathon pace. And I will tell you, I did not want to believe in the product, but I noticed a significant difference in my legs were not fatigued. I felt like I did not hit that lactate threshold at any point. I felt like my turnover was better. I felt like my legs were just more sharp. And also, notably, my ability to recover after that hard run, I think it was 24 miles in total, I felt great the next day. So that was a good experience. I took it prior to the Eugene Marathon. I PR'd there. I've had several clients that have tried this product, and they have noticed similar benefits to what I just described as well. Another benefit of it is, so if we think about what sodium bicarbonate is it has sodium in it. And so the dosage that you take is based on your body weight. So it's 0.3 grams per kilo of body weight. I think of the bicarbonate then, it's like, it would be equivalent to 4.5 teaspoons of sodium bicarbonate powder, baking soda powder, which obviously is very hard to get if you're not doing it in the mini capsule form. But for somebody my size, that's 4,000 milligrams of sodium, which is outstanding, right? So
it's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, the main benefit, and you ladies can attest to this, is many clients that I work with have a really hard time getting in salt during road marathon races and some of the more, strategic races, because a lot of gels are very low sodium and they're not carrying handheld hydration typically during those races. So my thought is, if we can preload 90 minutes before your marathon, there's a really good chance that you're not going to need to at all worry about sodium during the marathon, because that's well above your goal needs per hour. So I do see that as another significant benefit. And one of my clients, she is just indebted to this product because it's one less thing for her to have to worry about during the races. I would much rather preload with this salt and then obviously get that lactate lowering benefit than even have to worry about carrying salt tabs or handheld hydration or any of that other stuff. So again, I was this skeptic. I think, you know, when the research historically has not supported benefits for endurance athletes, and then we have a company touting all of these benefits, but we just haven't seen research, I tend to be more of a skeptic. But my experience personally, again, Morton taking that time, showing me some of the research, I do think it's a really fantastic tool. Again, a few nuances is the palatability is a little offsetting. I will say the other times that I've tried it, I've refrigerated the hydrogel so it's cold the night before and it's much more palatable, which is a good thing. And then also, obviously, the cost. I don't think for any beginner runners, I don't think for, you know, many of our age group athletes, it's a huge investment, obviously, for only 4 servings. So I do think that, you know, the right race scenario, you know, if it's a very highly competitive race, you may want to consider something like this. What about you ladies? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree. I had my husband, Sean, use it, and he has, like, he's preparing for Leadville this fall, and his training up until now, he just hasn't had the time to do some really long rides. And so he did, this was just last week, I ordered the system for him. Same experience. He's kind of an iron stomach guy too, and the texture was kind of like, wow, this is interesting. Kind of like mucus, like you said. And there is a system to it. So you have to like prepare that first little bit. You let it sit for 3 to 5 minutes, and then you add the pellets, and then let it sit again, and then you're able to take it. But he did a 6-hour ride, which is about 2 hours longer than he'd done yet this year. Very similar, what you just said, that he didn't ever feel like he reached that threshold where he was like both mentally and physically fatigued. And he said after, that was the least shelled I've ever seen him. Usually he comes back and he's just kind of like dizzy and like laying on the couch, and he like mowed the lawn. He felt great. He felt great the rest of the week. And so it was more of like, yeah, it is an added cost, but the benefit to what he was able to get out of it, just even the confidence for having a good workout, was worth the cost.
Absolutely. And you know, we always say too with our athletes, do not try anything new heading into race day that you have not tried in training. So again, it's nice that they include the 4 servings, because I would absolutely want, you know, my athletes to mimic their race day and do this before at least 1 to 2 of their longest long runs of their training cycle. I don't only want to focus on Morton though, because you can use regular baking soda that's cheap. You can buy that for $1. The thing is with that, if you just straight up eat it off of the spoon, there's a really good chance you're going to have those GI side effects. So it tends to be very much tolerated when you include it with the carbohydrate, which we always encourage anyways prior to any exercise. But, you know, sipping that with juice or having it with oatmeal or some sort of cereal, you could absolutely try that. I would say if you're going that route, absolutely try it before an easier type activity, just to make, first and foremost, your stomach tolerates it. But that is another possibility as well. The drawback with that is you would have to, again, have at least 4 teaspoons of baking soda. So if you physically measure that out, it doesn't sound like quite a bit, but I mean, that's going to be a heaping pile of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how would you even what would you pair that with to try and consume that amount?
I don't know. You know, I think it's probably one of those things where I would blend it with juice personally and just like try and down it as quick as possible.
Okay.
As quick as possible. I mean, Morton says that their product specifically, when you mix it with the hydrogel, it delays that gastric emptying from your stomach into your small intestine. And so out of the athletes that they researched, they had no GI side effects. As you ladies know, I have the world's most sensitive gut during training while running, and I had no GI side effects, which is astronomical to note. So yeah, whether or not it's a hydrogel, I don't know. I don't think there is any way to truly know. But I would say absolutely, if you're going to just experiment with the regular household baking soda on your own, I would absolutely include it with a carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, so I have questions. So with like the Morton, what was the minimum amount of times you would trial it before a race, but before using it in a race?
I personally did it 3 times before my marathon. And I did it heading in right before the longest long runs of my marathon.
And if you were going to use regular baking soda, trial it quite a bit more to kind of...
I do. And I would absolutely try it in various weather patterns so you can kind of mimic race day, especially heading into any fall races. Sometimes you just don't know. You have the delayed summer, which can really, cause high race day temperatures for early fall. I would do it in probably varying intensity workouts as well. And it's so inexpensive if you're doing regular baking soda that I would say, really, if you can train the gut more, the better. 10 times, 15 times heading into race day, absolutely.
Yeah, I have heard from athletes just through Instagram about that use just regular baking soda and they haven't had any GI issues. I think they were more on the cyclist ends of things, which cyclists tend to have a little bit less case of GI issues than runners would. But yeah, I think this is a super interesting way of, trying to enhance performance. And I love especially the sodium piece of it as well, of like
I do too.
Preloading before your race, especially a marathon, and it's just one less thing that you don't really have to worry about during the race. I think that is amazing. Talk to me again, just remind me the timing of like with the Morton, you took it how long before you started your race or your training? That's a good
question. And so actually they have this fancy app where you can go on and you would plug in your workout and you would also plug in what your breakfast is, and they tell you exactly when you would take that, when they would recommend taking it.
Oh, wow.
But by and large, for most athletes, it's about 90 minutes before the start of your race.
Okay.
Yep.
And something to consider too, I'm just thinking of like the New York Marathon, for example, where it's like such a production to get to the race start. You have to be almost taking it like on the ferry or like...
Alex, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I had an athlete that ran Grandma's Marathon. Mind you, she did amazing. She blew her A goal out of the water by 4 or 5 minutes. Who does that?
Our clients do, of course.
I know. But, so as you know, Grandma's Marathon, you have to bus out there to the start line. And so she was eating it out of this bowl on the way to the bus, and she dropped it. So there she was, trying to like scoop this gelatinous solution off the pavement.
Stop it. Oh my god.
I need this. I mean, she salvaged it and was able to eat as much as she can and did phenomenal. So again, I should mention the minimum dose is 0.2 grams per kilo of body weight, and what they send you is the optimal dose.
Okay.
So for me personally, it was 0.3 grams per kilo of body weight. So if you don't quite get it all, it's going to be fine. It's going to be just fine. Yeah. I could talk about sodium bicarbonate all day long. I love this. I think it's trending more, and I think it's for the better. I also do think more companies are going to come out with their own products, and hopefully that will drive the cost of this supplement down.
Yeah, I do think there are a couple other companies out there. They're just not as well known as obviously Morton is. So
yeah,
I would anticipate there being more variety of products out there.
For sure.
Which is exciting. It's nice to have options. For sure.
I shouldn't. Okay, one more thing. I have to laugh at this because they send you that bowl with the lid, and I go downstairs. I have 2 daughters, and my 8-year-old's eating her snack out of the Morton bicarb bowl because it's like the perfect snack container too, with like the screw-on lid.
Oh, that's so cute.
Classic.
I love it. Yep.
All right, well, let's move on to the next topic, because as Mary said, we could talk about bicarb all day long. But the next one's a really commonly asked one as well. So this is on creatine. So we see a lot of strength-based athletes that use it to put on lean muscle, increase their power in the gym. So can I, as an endurance athlete, see performance benefit from using creatine? And this actually was just one of our most recently published blog posts. And we do have a sodium bicarb blog that is coming out soon, I believe, if it's not already out. And so within the world of like supplements, I feel like creatine is one of the most talked about. It's a type of amino acid, and it is so popular among like weightlifters and athletes, especially like since the 1990s. And I do feel like there's a little bit of a stigma. There's a little bit of a fear around it, because I also think during the 1990s, like like steroids and like Arnold Schwarzenegger was all big and whatnot. But creatine is actually one of the most well-researched supplements. There are over like 300 research studies currently, which as dietitians, we love that. Like I feel, I have a cousin whose son is 16 and he's wanting to put on weight, and they asked me about creatine, and I said, absolutely, it's a very safe, well-researched supplement. I actually grabbed my own like creatine like from Thorne. I really like Thorne products here, so you know, it's a really, you know, I don't think people should be fearful of using a creatine supplement as long as you use it in the right dosage. But when you take creatine supplement, the creatine production starts in your kidneys with the 2 amino acids, glycine and arginine. That product's then transferred to your liver, where it interacts with another amino acid, methionine, and it forms creatine. So, and the rate of absorption with it is really determined by your exercise, and there's a few other factors as well. But you'll see probably a few different forms of creatine out there, but the most popular and the most researched is creatine monohydrate, and that's the one that's going to provide likely the most benefit. You can find it in a powder or a capsule form. Definitely shown in research to improve muscle growth, benefiting anaerobic exercises, so those short bursts of energy. So compared to like your aerobic exercises, more of your endurance sports, we're not really seeing a lot of benefit in improving endurance performance with creatine. The studies that have looked into it, they just have found that endurance performance really isn't influenced that well. So the bottom line, I would say, with creatine for our endurance athletes is if you're in in-season training, it's probably not a high priority supplement to take. You might be better off just purchasing like a really quality protein powder. I grabbed like my Thorne Whey Protein Isolate, which is my favorite. I mix it with ice and some milk, and it tastes like a Wendy's Frosty. I'm not even exaggerating. It literally is just like a dessert. And so that's just going to provide all of the essential amino acids that you need to help support recovery and maintaining your muscle. But with creatine, there are some side effects that could also impact endurance performance. So one of the number one reasons, and I just posted on Instagram about creatine a few days ago, and someone was asking, how do I deal with like the water retention, the bloating from creatine? And I was like, well, that's actually just a really common side effect. There's some short-term water retention, especially in those early stages of supplementation with creatine. Creatine draws water into your muscle cells, so it will leave you feeling bloated or puffy. So you might want to consider timing if you're going to take it during your training season, during your race season, so that that bloating doesn't interfere. And it may also help to pair your creatine with some carbs as well, just to help with that absorption and limit the water retention as well. Some athletes will also just see some weight gain just from that water retention. So if you're starting to take a creatine supplement, you might see your the scale go up a few pounds. And it's honestly just that water weight. That's something that, again, our endurance athletes might not want to see during their in-season. If you have a history of kidney stones or any like kidney or liver complications, definitely talk with your primary care provider about using creatine, because it might not be recommended with those types of situations. And then also there could be some potential digestive issues. Nausea, stomach discomfort is usually seen with like higher doses of creatine. If you're taking above like the recommended like 5 grams of creatine monohydrate, that's just something to consider. You might want to take your dosage in smaller amounts a few times during the day instead of one large dose. You can get creatine from your food, so fish, red meat, chicken, organ meats such as liver. So for like our plant-based athletes, you might actually see the biggest benefit by using creatine, because you're just not going to get very, very much creatine from your diet alone. So, and most creatine supplements are actually vegan. So you obviously want to check the label on your product, but for the most part, they are a plant-based supplement. And so if you are vegan or vegetarian, worth considering experimenting with. Or just in general for endurance athletes, using kind of in your off season, if your goal is to put on some more leaner muscle during that off season, would be also a good option as well. So I'm curious, ladies, what your thoughts are on using creatine in endurance sports.
I personally have never used it myself. I did, again, kind of, Sean is my guinea pig, my husband. And he did use it in the beginning of his season. And we did it mostly when he was doing a lot of lifting, kind of like preemptively heading into the season. And he did notice increases in power, in the amount that he was able to lift. But we actually did taper him off of a little bit, because he does put on muscle size pretty easily. He is one of those that builds muscle very fast. And so it started to have a negative effect actually on his ability just with his endurance sports racing. Just actually kind of a funny story, like his traps and shoulders got so big that like when he came out of the water, he couldn't reach behind to like get his wetsuit off, like to pull the zipper down, because his shoulders were too big. So we had to back off on the dose a little bit. He was almost like Hulk, like it was just like, rip it off. But that is not obviously a typical response. I would say most people, especially as we get older, it's become harder and harder to build muscle, to put on muscular size. So that's an added way to help support that. And like you said, Alex, it can be really difficult to get in our food, because even if we are taking optimal doses through our food, it's not just what we're eating, it's what we're able to digest and absorb. Mm-hmm. And protein takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of stomach acid to break down. So even though we might be getting in our diet, A, we're not getting therapeutic doses, and B, it's really hard for a lot of people struggling with digestion now, it would be hard to actually absorb like we should be. So I don't use it a lot in my athletes, but I think for those who are in power sports and maybe need some extra support putting on that muscular strength or size, it can be really a useful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with what Hannah's saying. I would say I haven't used it a ton with my athletes. I've never used it myself, but I do have an athlete that's post-surgery and getting back into training and competing, and she has done absolutely fantastic. And she's been consistently taking it before her strength training sessions, and her recovery post-surgery has been absolutely flawless. Now, obviously, we can't discern, is that from the creatine, is it from really good nutrition that's anti-inflammatory, adequate protein intake, she's amazing with hydration otherwise, and she's also improved her body composition. Certainly there's a ton of other factors, but I do think the creatine specifically for her post-surgery was absolutely appropriate and certainly a helpful tool in her tool basket for recovery.
Well, and that's why I have it, because throughout this pregnancy I've been pretty sedentary, and I'm like, okay, when I get back postpartum into doing, I mean, my plan is to, gradually get back into fitness and likely just start with some strength training and like pelvic floor strength. And I'm like, this is probably going to be a tool for me to just get myself back to feeling fit and strong again before I start running again and doing some major, endurance like cardio activities. So that's one of the reasons why I just have it here, is because, I'm kind of just preemptive, like, no, I'm getting in this mindset of like, once I'm ready to get back to doing some physical fitness, it's likely going to be strength training, and I'm going to need to build some muscle mass back just from, 8-9 months of being sedentary. And so it's just a tool that I'm going to use, but probably not super long term, but just to get myself back into the strength that I'm needing to get back to running again.
I feel like we need to do an episode on like trying these supplements ourselves personally and report back.
Yes.
Yeah, and
we'll document it on the blog for sure.
Yeah. Well, with creatine too, there is a loading period, so that's why they do recommend that you take more for a 5-day period. So typically your dose would be somewhere between 3 and 5 grams. The loading period is up to 10 grams, and you do that for 5 to 7 days, because that way you're stocking your creatine stores that much quicker. Mm-hmm. The research doesn't support that over a longer loading period. So if you were to take the maintenance dose, which is 3 to 5 grams, it's going to take you about 4 to 6 weeks to kind of reach your levels of optimal creatine. But if you load, you're going to get it within 7 to 14 days. The research doesn't really support either one over the other.
Yeah.
But if you want to try it, I would say do that in either scenario, whether it's a load phase or just a maintenance, and then assess. Some people might notice like a huge improvement, others might not. So,
well, and if you're going to do the loading phase method, you're definitely going to see some like water retention and bloating, and the scale will go up. Yep. So, and that can freak people out. So if that is something that you're like, that's going to freak me out, then you might just want to go the consistent route longer term to, that's just my like suggestion too, is just kind of thinking about what's going to be best for my mental health, because some people really just can't stand that bloating, water retention feeling.
Absolutely.
So the loading phase might not be the best route, especially for endurance athletes, just because they're a little more sensitive to that.
For sure. Sean did a maintenance dose. We did not load, and he did not experience any bloating or water retention as a result of that. But
yeah.
Males are different than females too, so.
Yeah, and if you're someone that's like in the off season, wanting to hit the gym and really put on muscle, and even for like those endurance body types that have trouble putting on muscle, my husband would be one of those. What is it? Ectomorph or endomorph? I'm mesomorph, so I put on muscle pretty easily. But which one is it? Ecto.
Oh man, you have. I think it's ecto does not.
Yeah, I believe it's ectomorph. So, that body type tends to not put on muscle very well. That's like your really tall, lean athletes that just really struggle to put on weight. If there's someone that's wanting to put on more muscle mass, that would be an option for them as well. Just my thoughts. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the last question. This is another. I get this question all the time.
I love this one.
Me too.
We're going to talk about green powders. So we see a lot of professional athletes, some podcasts that promote these types of products. Like, are they worth it? Should an athlete be using them? Like, Hannah, I want you to kick this off, because again, you guys both have even personal experience trialing them as well. So let's talk about green powders.
And I'm gonna be really excited to hear Mary's input on this as well, because I know that she's trialed some green powders. But so basically, if we go back to research, most studies looking into the effectiveness of greens powders, there's not a lot. So most of them, there's less than 100 available, and they are looking at very few participants. And so, we have to look at that. So we haven't looked at the long-term effectiveness of using something like a greens powders. Now, basically what the research says is, yes, it can have a positive impact on lowering high blood pressure for those who do have high blood pressure, or they can be effective in increasing levels of vitamin C or vitamin E in the bloodstream, as well as folate and other certain antioxidants like beta carotene, for example. Since greens powders are concentrated forms of fruits and vegetables, it's easy to want to connect them to the benefits of a diet rich in those same nutrients, such as like a lower risk of heart disease and diabetes. But what we have to remember is that we cannot extrapolate the benefits of whole foods to those that's in greens powders. I have to also say that the rise in popularity of these is due mostly in part to the fact that it is like truly excellent marketing. Like if you open up your Instagram, I would say that probably like 9 out of 10 influencers take a certain greens powder. You name your one. I don't want to name a certain one. But so there's just everybody, it looks like they're taking it, right? So it's almost natural to think that like, oh, everybody's having this, I should have it too. But I think what we have to continue to remember that we can't like replace in our diet what we should be getting just from whole foods with a greens powder. Beyond that, I'll make one more aside before I ask your guys' opinion. It has a lot to do with like third-party testing and what other ingredients are available or are in the powder. So if you really take a deep dive into the ingredients, you do want to make sure that it does say in the label like third-party testing, because greens powders would be likely potentially to have higher amounts of heavy metals in it or maybe artificial ingredients to make it taste good, so therefore negating the benefits of actually taking something like that. For me personally, I have tried them. I've tried actually several amounts. And I think I will say initially you likely will see a benefit. I think anytime that we do change something in our diet, it's likely that we are going to see a benefit. It's more of like the long-term effect of this. Like, do we actually need the amount that they are providing in there? Like, just as an example, there is a certain greens powder on the market that literally has over 1,000% of your daily needs of biotin. I actually don't know if we need that amount on a very like consistent basis. That's, again, I think for the right person in the right situation, let's say if you're traveling a lot and you're eating out a lot and you don't have a lot of access to vegetables, maybe you need a little bit more bolstering to your immune system, I do find that this product might be beneficial. I just don't think it's needed potentially on a daily basis and in a long-term situation. What do you guys think?
Ooh, I love this. And I love this topic. And to many of your fantastic points, Anna. So I'll just put it, I tried Athletic Greens because when I run and when I marathon train, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And honest to God, every single podcast I listen to touts Athletic Greens. And I just got to the point one day where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write to Athletic Greens and I want to try some. And so they send me a kit, which was great. And I started taking it right away. So I did not want to like this product. No part of me wanted to like Athletic Greens, for the record, because I was so annoyed with this propaganda everywhere.
Well, and we don't, and like as dietitians, we're always food first, right? That's the thing. Like we want people to eat food and eat well, and so like taking a shortcut of an Athletic Greens, it's like it goes against the grain of like our profession. But
absolutely. And it's expensive. If you look at most of these products, I mean, they're at minimum $50 a month. I think Athletic Greens, based on the subscription, it's closer to $100 a month. So it's like, oh my gosh, you could get like a pretty darn good grocery haul for that much. So yes, I mean, for a variety of reasons, I didn't want to like the product, but I started taking it right away. Because I really like to keep up to date on all of these trends for our athletes so I can speak firsthand about, you know, my experience with it. And I don't know if from I will say a few things happened. One, my nails started growing amazingly, which is unsurprising, given the folate
all of
and
the
biotin.
biotin.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say that so that was when I was marathon training, and I was not as fatigued throughout the day as I typically am, just being a mom, working, doing all of the things. My resting heart rate decreased by about 3 to 4 beats per minute on average overnight. And I would imagine that has subsequent benefits with just heart rate velocity and all of that, which I obviously can't assess. I know that it was better absorbed than other multivitamins because when you have a multivitamin, there's 2 hours later, your urine is often bright yellow.
Mine
meaning
is
you're excreting
like just
out
neon yellow with these premium
yes,
vitamins.
a lot of the B vitamins. I did not have that, interestingly, with Athletic Greens. And I don't know, for somebody like me, I've mentioned even earlier in this episode, I have a lot of GI issues while training and while running. And so it's really hard for me to eat whole grains, beans, lentils, fruit, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day without having serious problems on my runs. And so, like Hannah's point, I do feel like for many athletes that also struggle with that just unfortunately have to limit all of those very nutritious, health promoting foods. I really do think the greens powder can be advantageous in situations like that. I also do think the greens powder can be advantageous if you're a higher level athlete, or you're doing a lot of double days, triple days some days, where it's just, obviously if you're training 5 hours a day, it's going to limit the number of eating occurrences that you have during the day. So invariably it's just difficult to get in all of your vitamin and mineral needs. So, to Hannah's point, I really do think it's a good backup plan. I don't know if it's the best long-term solution, but I would absolutely support it for any athletes that have pretty consistent lags in their vitamin and mineral intake, and if they're in a heavy volume, heavy training season. What are your thoughts,
Or traveling.
Alex?
That's another thing,
traveling.
too.
Absolutely.
In one of the dietitian Facebook groups that I'm in, someone asked about green powders, and there was a lot of opinions, and there was quite a few dietitians that were just like super anti-green powders, but I don't think they actually had ever tried them or like considered like things like, okay, what if an athlete is in a situation, or not even an athlete, just a general person is in a situation where they're not able to eat well for an extended period of time. Maybe they're traveling long term and they're really limited. Like, it would be a good option. Yes, it's expensive, but it's not something, again, that we would recommend taking all year round, every single day, and definitely third-party testing. So like Athletic Greens, for example, the one that Mary mentioned, is NSF certified for sport. That's great. That is, one of our gold standard third-party testing when it comes to sports supplements. The other option is if it's got informed choice for sport label on a supplement. We like that one as well. So looking for those types of things, and if it's checking all of the boxes and you find that, yeah, it does provide me with, I feel better, and that's something I've heard from quite a few people that I've tried, Athletic Greens or other green powder products. I'm like, if you don't mind spending the money and you feel better on it, like, I'm okay with it as long as it's safe. You know, that's the most important thing. Like, you have to come into it with a very practical mindset. And a lot of the dietitians in that Facebook group also said, I use it when I travel. And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
I feel like Athletic Greens is a very robust product too, because not only are you getting all of the nutrient components, but you're also getting like fruit and vegetable blends, you're getting adaptogens, you're getting digestive enzyme support and probiotics. So it is the most robust one that I probably have seen on the market. So I don't necessarily know if it's all of the nutrients, because that takes time to absorb. I don't know that you would be seeing the benefit of all of those nutrients like that immediate. But I think you could, from some of the adaptogens, from the digestive support for helping you break down some harder things to digest. So from that aspect, I think, maybe using it intermittently throughout the year, or utilizing some of the travel packs that they give you, so that when you do travel, there's less stress to really worry about getting a lot of fruits and vegetables in your diet.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. I would say too, Alex, your comment about safe. So with a lot of the herbal type ingredients in Athletic Greens specifically, and presumably a lot of the other brands, it's important to note that if you are taking any medications, you absolutely want to run this by your medical care provider, because some of those ingredients can interfere with the absorption of medications. And there's a disclaimer, not recommended for pregnant and I believe also lactating women as well. So absolutely look into that further if it's a product that you're looking into, and just to make sure that it would be safe for each individual to take if you're going to start something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. All right, ladies, we're going to wrap this up. This was hands down like one of our best conversations so far. I'm just like obsessed with these topics. I feel like we could continue on down the road of all sorts of different supplements. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I wonder about this supplement or that supplement, let us know. We can add it to our queue of questions to answer and discuss here. And make sure, of course, to tap that subscribe button as well as we continue to put out more videos in the future. So thank you for listening, and we will see you soon.